Hi, this is Bob Roth, Managing Partner and Co-Founder of Cypress Home Care Solutions. Since 1994, we have been providing in-home supportive care services for our older adult population right here in Phoenix, Arizona. Since 2014, we've been bringing you a show on Money Radio called Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. In case you miss our show that airs every Friday at noon, you can catch it right here on our podcast called Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. So when you get a chance, listen in and enjoy the show.
The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants. It's time for Health Futures with Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and it must be Friday, and indeed it is. We're coming at you live from the Scottsdale Air Park Money Radio Studios, 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, World Wide Web, moneyradio1510.com, and we are now podcasting as well. You can catch us up on podcast. If this is the first time you're tuning into our show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. How do they do that? They do that by listening right here, not to me, but to these extraordinary guests that I get to come to the show. And today's no different. Today I won't say in the studio, I've got coming through technology, telephone, old school technology, but it works the best here for radio. I've got Star Bradbury. She is with Senior Living Strategies. She's the CEO, and she is also an aging life care specialist. Welcome to the show, Star.
Hi, Bob. Thank you. I'm very, very happy to be here and grateful for the technology. They can get me from Florida to you.
Well, you know what? Both of our areas are probably some of the warmer climates right now. I saw it.
Absolutely.
I saw a
True. Very lucky.
I saw a data point that said like 80% of the population of the U.S. was experiencing freezing or colder weather. And I'm like, not here, and not where you're at either.
Well, I'm in North Florida, and they're saying it's going to go down to 26 degrees Sunday morning. So we'll see. That is a little chillier than usual for us.
Well, I'll bet. Well, for our listeners, you and I have not met before, and I'm really pleased to have you on this show because what you do is exactly what we talk about. But, one of the things that we typically do, too, is we try to really get to know our guests a little bit better. And, I have your bio, and I had a lot of information on what you're doing and the book you wrote, but I also did a deeper dive into your LinkedIn, so I'm very impressed with your background. So if you would share with me and our listeners about, a little bit about you and how you got into the aging world, because you've got plenty of experience, and you know what? Experience matters.
I do. Yeah, how much do you want to know, and how much time do we have?
Well, we've got about 6 minutes left on this segment, so I'd like to get it done in the first segment because we got 3 more after that.
That's great. So let me tell you that I made a choice to go into the senior living industry after a 10-year career in something else I was getting burned out on. And I said, what are my strengths? What do I like to do? Help people. How can I make a difference and build a career in something I really believe in? And so I really made a decision that I would go into senior living, and have spent the last 25 years in the senior living industry. So my perspective's a little different, meaning I'm not a nurse that wrote a book about helping with your aging parents. I'm a professional in the senior living industry. I used to run I was a healthcare administrator and the marketing director for assisted living, a standalone assisted living facility, and then also did the same with a memory care facility, Bob, and then spent 18 years in a life care community affiliated with the University of Florida. So I have a really wide range of practical experience in senior living. And then I have my personal experience, Bob. My parents, I had two sets of parents. My parents divorced, remarried. I had a dad and a stepmom in New York City, and my mom and stepdad lived in Fort Lauderdale. They're all gone, and I learned just as much about what not to do, I'm sad to say, and also critical information to pass on to my readers of my book and my clients about what not to do that is likely not to work. So my focus has been on developing a plan to age successfully and getting people to think about that.
And successfully in doing it in a way where you can get the best in the final chapter or days and years in your life. And I totally get it.
Yeah, and let's not say final chapter, because I say that because in my experience, Bob, so I look at a much, much broader range of time, meaning when do people retire? And I kind of joke, Bob, that so many people spend years planning their retirement, and I bet your listeners are nodding. Of course they did. They're planners, and they wouldn't be listening to your show.
Right.
But how much time have they spent in what I call post-retirement planning, which, by the way, could be 20 years or longer? You know, the fastest growing demographic, Bob, is 90 to 100.
Wow.
And that means we could be retiring at 60 or 65 and looking at a long range of time. And I call it the go-go years, the slow-go years, and then the no-go years. But there's lots of time in those go-go years, but you should be planning for that full arc of time to successfully age.
Did you trademark that? Because that is so good. Go-go, slow-go, and no-go years.
No-go.
I really love that.
It's in my book, and I probably should. I didn't make it up. I credit the person in my book who gave me that, but I loved it because it kind of makes people stop and go, yeah, I get it.
No, totally. I totally get it as well. You know, I wrote a column, and I like I said to you, I just did a LinkedIn and just connected with you. So I really wanted you to share our background, your background. And by the way, the one piece that I really like, and maybe we can take a deeper dive into it in the second, third, or fourth segment, is that you spent 18 years as the director of sales and marketing for a community on the campus of University of Florida in Gainesville. And
I did.
And we have one here that opened up just a few years ago called Mirabella, which is right there on the campus at ASU. And, you know, the whole premise behind that is to have continuing learning, right? And really to give the older adults an opportunity to connect with, you know, students and certainly the university and all it has to offer to the community. So I'm anxious to learn more about that. But I wanted to just share with you, I wrote a column just a couple weeks ago, at the beginning of this month, for the Jewish News here locally, talking about long-term care, just what you and I are talking about it, and how it's a dilemma because people aren't planning for it.
Oh, boy. I know that.
And I run a home care agency, and I got to tell you, Star, I disappoint at least 50% of the callers. Because 50% of the callers think that Medicare is going to pay for in-home supportive care services.
Oh, I know. I get so upset with that.
And then they think, you know, oh, my supplement will pay for it, or Medicare Advantage will pay for it, or how about my managed care company? No,
Gosh, I have so many conversations like that, Bob.
No go. You know, no.
Yeah, I had a client yesterday whose loved one is going to have to go into assisted living. And, of course, she assumed incorrectly that Medicare would just pay for long-term care. First of all, you and I both know that it's almost never, you might as well say never. Medicare rarely pays for any assisted living, much less Medicaid, or any long-term care that's ongoing. And I bet your listeners are saying, well, that's not true. I just did rehab after my surgery, and I was doing PT, physical therapy, occupation, and they paid. And we both know, well, that's different. That's short-term rehabilitation. And
Right.
you and I are talking about ongoing long-term care. And the statistics are frightening, by the way. 70%. Here's one. Listen to this. In 2060, 94.7 million people, a quarter of the U.S. population, will be 65 plus. And anyone 65 and older has a 70% chance of needing some kind of long-term care. And by that, we are not talking about rehab. We're talking about assisted living and skilled care ongoing.
And 1/3 of those 70% are going to need care for 3 years or more. And people don't plan for that.
I know.
Star Bradbury, it's great to have you on the show. I told you we have 4 segments. We got 3 more coming up. So much to talk about. You and I are so aligned in our mission, and we want to educate not only our listeners, but our community about long-term care. Stick around. We got 3 more segments. You're listening to Health Futures. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. A little blinded by the light, James. That's really good. I like that. Old schooling it for me. You're listening to Health Futures. If you're just tuning in, we're in our second segment. I've got Star Bradbury here in the studio, actually via technology, talking to us about aging. And she is an aging life care specialist. She's got a company called Senior Living Strategies. She's the CEO. And where we left off was basically talking about the disappointment on who pays for long-term care, Star. And, you know,
it's always a shock.
It is. And being in, some people call it non-medical, some people call it non-clinical. I've been on a crusade for about 15, maybe 17 years to change the name because it tells the world what you're not, and it doesn't tell you what you are. And I like to use the phrase in-home supportive care services. I think that describes us really well. And I like that. When you need additional, I like to say additional hands, you need feet, you need eyes and ears. When you're
let's face it, Bob. If you ask people, would you rather age in place and stay in your home and get the care you need in your home? I think the statistics are 90% or higher of all older people want to age in place. They want to stay in their home.
Right.
And since we know that's a given, that's true, then people need to be aware that they have to plan financially to pay for that care in their home. Again, it's going to be private pay, meaning you're paying. It's coming out of your pocket, even if it's just a home companion. But you and I have both seen many, many families who can successfully age in place. We're talking now about, remember my phrasing, slow-go or no-go years, where now you're not traveling to Europe, right? You're not checking everything on your bucket list. Something's happened to the degree that you need a little help to be able to age successfully in your home. Well, it could make all the difference in the world if someone was coming in 2-3 times a week or longer for a few hours a day, just helping you with the things that you need help with. And that means that you can age more successfully. And I like to explain to people, it isn't losing your independence. It's helping you maintain your independence, Bob.
Right. No doubt. And, I've been doing this a long time where home care was actually more affordable than assisted living. And it's no longer because of the cost of labor. Since the pandemic, most home care agencies have had to increase their prices as much as 45% because of
True.
because of labor costs. And I don't think people really realize how much it costs. And I want to kind of set the table so people understand. When it comes to long-term care, there are 4 ways you can pay for it. You can pay for it through private funds, family funds, if that's what you want to call it. Long-term care insurance, if you were fortunate enough to buy that, about 3% of our population, less than that, did buy that. If you're a veteran, you get veteran benefits or Medicaid. And you know what? Just because you don't have enough money in your bank account doesn't mean you're going to qualify. There's some really strict standards as it relates to your health that require you to qualify. And by the way, people think that Medicaid's free. It's not. I mean, when someone does end up passing, they do grab and sweep out as much of the funds that are left in that person's account that they used for long-term care in the end of their life. So how do we do this? We need to educate people. And gosh, Star, I'm so glad you're here on the show with me, because in this article I referenced, I said that when you graduate high school, you should start thinking about long-term care. And I know that may be a little far-fetched, but
gosh, I am laughing so hard because when I tell people that they should start these conversations with their parents or between each other in their 50s, people go, 50s? I won't. I'm not even retired then. And to which I say, exactly. But I've never heard anybody say, when they graduate high school. So I can't imagine what would happen if I started to say that, even though I kind of like that approach.
Well, I use that extreme because, in-home supportive care services, if someone's getting 24/7 care, is going to cost about $350,000 with after-tax dollars.
I know.
And if you want to cut that
Who can afford that?
And if you want to cut that in half, that's $180,000. You want to take that in half again, that's $90,000. So, you have to be prepared to spend, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year of in-home supportive care services if you need somebody in the home, let's call it 6 or 8 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. It's a very costly proposition. And assisted living isn't any cheaper. I mean, these nice assisted living communities that are here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I am sure in Jacksonville, that one location that you worked out of for 18 years, right there on the university's campus, I'm sure it was amazing, and I'm sure it wasn't cheap.
It was amazing. It is amazing. I'm a big fan of life care communities, and Bob, you and I could spend an entire show on the pluses of a life care community, and in my book, I have an entire chapter that really explains, the big question, life care communities, are they worth the high cost? Because I know some of your listeners are out there thinking, yeah, I know, you have to pay an entry fee and it's not real estate based. And yes, it's complex, but there's a lot of pluses. But, I just checked before I called you about the median cost according to the Genworth Cost of Care Survey, which is a wealth of information for any of you trying to compare costs nationally by zip code for home care, assisted living, skilled nursing, you name it. It's part of this website. And the median cost for skilled nursing is $9,872 a month for a private room, which is $325 a day. But I'm telling you that at the community I worked at here in Florida, it is over $14,000 a month for a private room. So there's really quite a range, which you might not expect, you might not think, but believe me, there's a huge range nationally between 4 or 5 states that come in at the highest cost, which, by the way, are Alaska, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New Hampshire. And this is assisted living range, $7,200 to $6,400. That's assisted living. So you can expect very high costs, Bob, for assisted or skilled. What? And and remember, assisted living and even long-term care and skilled is, like you said, private pay, family funds, long-term care insurance. Rarely is it Medicaid.
No, rarely, rarely it is. I'm so glad, Star, that you brought up the Genworth cost of care chart. And, for our listeners, that's all you have to do is just Google in the URL, Genworth cost of care. Pull this up. They do it every single year. I don't know if the one for this year has come out just yet, but
No,
it's.
I think they've gone to every other year or so.
So the nice thing about it
Yeah.
is, for me, who I've been operating my family's business for 20 years, it's a great way to gauge what the costs are. And I'm going to tell you, I gave you the number about 40 to 45%
Right.
cost of care for home care. The last couple years, I mean, forever I was looking at this, and they would go up maybe 1 or 2%. These last
Correct.
couple years, it's been double-digit percentages. And to
Well, you nailed it. You nailed it, Bob. COVID and the pandemic absolutely changed the face of cost of healthcare, and not just home care. We're talking about hospitals, skilled nursing, assisted living, doctors' offices, home care, home health care, because all of the hourly rates went up, and they went up a lot, and they needed to personally, and they had to, but it sure makes it hard on the families.
Well, the families, I mean, let's face it, they only have so much discretionary income. They're living on
Correct.
they're living on fixed incomes, and you bring up the communities. I mean, it's my world is care, and
Right.
you worked in the community setting most of your career, and I'm going to tell you that most people don't realize that they got food services, they got housekeeping, they got engineering.
Right.
If they don't have their engineer guy there and you've got electrical issues, you got big problems.
Correct.
If you don't have food service people there, who's going to make the food and serve the food? And I can't begin to tell you how many EDs I came across and some of them I know very well during the pandemic. They found themselves in the kitchen. They found themselves doing housekeeping. I mean,
I've served meals before.
right. You do what you have to do. You know what? When we
Yes,
come
you
back,
do.
it's hard to believe we're halfway done. You wrote a book called Successfully Navigating Your Parents' Senior Years, Critical Information to Maximize Their Independence. I want to talk a little bit more about your book and how our listeners can get access to it. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock at You. It's halftime. We'll be right back. I hope you're enjoying the show. This is your host, Bob Roth, managing partner and co-founder of Cypress Home Care Solutions. If you have any questions about the topics that are discussed during the show, visit us online at cypresshomecare.com or give us a call at 602-264-8009. We are entering now the second half of our show, so stay tuned for more helpful information to assist you with your aging loved ones.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, we're in our second half here. I am pleased to have Star Bradbury here with me. She is with Senior Living Strategies. They're located down in Florida. She's an aging life care specialist, and she's also an author. She authored a book called Successfully Navigating Your Parents' Senior Years, Critical Information to Maximize Their Independence. If you missed our first half, go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button right below. That is radio show. You'll catch this one and a whole lot more. So, Star, we were talking about your book. That's kind of how I left the half off. I wanted to tease our listeners and actually tease me too. So I unfortunately have not read your book, but I definitely plan on putting it on my list and doing so. But please do tell me.
I promise you'll learn something new, Bob. Even you.
Well,
I promise you.
Well, I'll tell you what, I learn every single day. And I will tell you where you worked at that community, what was it called, Oakwood?
Oak Hammock at the University of Florida.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's kind of, that would be my jam if I was up there in years doing continuing learning. Because hey, listen, that's what keeps us alive. Got to keep learning.
Well, I think yes, I totally agree. And in my book, I talk about the 5 pillars of aging successfully. And I have a list of those things. And if we had more time, I'd go into them. But I will say that one of those things is having a passion for lifelong learning and a purpose. And all of the research shows that the people who continue to learn, continue to stay connected to their community, connected to people socially, are the ones that age successfully and age the healthiest. And I know that's the focus of your program.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to point out to people is that I wrote my book. I really am passionate about trying to pass on so much knowledge that I gained in 24 years in senior living and, as I told you, personally, so that my readers can make educated and informed decisions as they navigate the challenges they face or they face as a family with their aging parents. Because the healthcare system is complicated, senior living is even more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say senior living, Bob, I'm talking about the spectrum of full-service retirement communities, life care communities, all the way through to assisted or skilled care. There's a lot to learn that you really need to know long before a crisis for yourself or for your aging parents. So the book can easily be applied to yourself if you're aging and wondering, am I doing this successfully? How could I learn some principles to apply that would guide me through this challenging maze?
Well,
so that's why I wrote the book, to really help people.
Well, the book, just so everyone knows, is up there on Amazon. It looks like you got it released last year, right? It was.
I did. It came out
March?
in end of March. Yes.
Yeah, March.
And I'm getting great feedback from people that it is a step-by-step guide for people to use. And the way I feel about this is that I want people to be, I call it realistic optimism, Bob. I do think you need to be realistic, as you and I have stressed, and you probably stress at every show, about being prepared and understanding the cost of long-term care or the challenges of aging parents. And by the way, there are probably many listeners that could be in their 60s and 70s, and guess what? They're still taking care of their parents in their 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And so remember I told you about that long arc for
Mm-hmm.
either yourself or being a caregiver, and they need help.
You know, one of the things that I see here on Amazon, which, by the way, they do a great job of summarizing, the context of your book. And I really would like to take a minute or two to talk about it here. Is they have listed here, or it's part of what you wrote about, is the red flags that indicate your parents may need more help. Can you?
Oh, yeah.
Can you? I mean, I love radio because people can visualize what my guests say and talk about. Can you give our listeners and me some of those red flags that we should be really looking for that tell us that mom and dad need more help?
To.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say that and this is especially challenging for those of you that may be long-distance caregivers, so you're not visiting on a regular basis your aging loved ones, and maybe you're showing up at holidays or you have a family member telling you, I'm worried about mom, I'm worried about dad, and here are some things that could show up that would be red flags. It's top of my list. Number one, they're starting to miss appointments or be surprised that you showed up when you had an arranged plan for lunch, or you know them to be quite social, but you're seeing that they're becoming less and less social when you ask them about, why aren't you going out with your friends anymore, Mom? Oh, I don't know. It's just, I'm just not interested in that as much. That's a red flag because there's something else going on there. It isn't just that they're not interested. People who tend to start isolating, withdrawing, Bob, start to make excuses. Another one would be old food in the refrigerator that they're not throwing out. Or another big red flag, and you're going to go, yeah, I know that one. Pills on the floor unorganized medications.
Mm.
They're in lots of different rooms. They're not well organized. You see pills out, and that's a concern because that's a primary reason older people go to the hospital: mismanagement of medications, not taking enough, taking too many,
Mm-hmm.
cutting pills in half when they shouldn't be. And there's a long list. It could be they used to be dressed impeccably.
So true.
They were so neat and attentive to their personal hygiene and their personal appearance. And you're seeing that slip.
So true. And you talked about long distance family caregiving. And,
Mm.
I served on the board and I've been a member of the Home Care Association of America, for over 20 years. And, we did a home care study, and we, through our study, discovered that the average distance from an adult child to a parent was 280 miles.
Right.
And
That's a lot.
and you talk about the phone, and that's really one of the giveaways too, is that if you're talking to your mom or dad and they're kind of rushing you off the phone, they're doing that for a reason. Where mom and dad used to talk a lot, and I think a lot of people don't really take the time to think about why and what they might
What
be.
could that mean?
What could it mean? But
Mm-hmm.
what is mom and dad feeling? You know, I got to tell you, I mean, I've had these thoughtful conversations with our clients, and trust me, they know. They know exactly that they're forgetful, and they're trying to not worry you, and they don't want to
Right.
get caught like asking the same question over and over again. So it's much easier for them to say,
True.
honey, I got to go,
Right.
and cut you off. And
Or
oftentimes,
Post-its. Way too many Post-its in the home where you see they're reminding them about themselves, about
I, be-
every little detail.
I better take down the Post-its. No, I use it. I use them around my office.
I love Post-its. I do. I love Post-its. I don't want your listeners to freak out.
Yeah.
I love Post-its too.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you see like 20 reminding them that their doctor's appointment is at this time and that they're supposed to do this at this time, and I take my meds at 10 a.m. Post-its are a good thing, but they're a far cry from a well-organized medication reminder system.
No doubt. And the other thing is that, if you are around your loved one, is to, if you notice their hygiene. You talked about, whether they were grooming and, presentable and how they were dressed, but, notice their hygiene, and also notice if they have any bumps or bruises on them. And that's usually a giveaway that they're falling.
Yep.
And also watch their gait. If you find that, they're unstable and they're using the furniture, and as I like to call it, they're surfing the furniture and the tables,
great expression.
that's a sign too. Well, you're listening to Health Futures. Star, we got 3 segments down. We got 1 more to go. I want to talk about this one subject that I know that you shared with me in the email that I got, and that is talking about a good death. So let's talk about that in the last segment.
I'd love to. Thanks.
We're down 3. Got 1 more to go. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, I've got Star Bradbury here with me. She's got a company called Senior Living Strategies. She's a CEO, and she also is an aging life care specialist. She also wrote a book that was released last March. It's called Successfully Navigating Your Parents' Senior Years, Critical Information to Maximize Their Independence. We had a chance to chat just briefly about it here in the 3rd segment, but here we're back in the 4th segment, and it's not quite a year. I would imagine you're getting some nice traction on this.
Well, I am. I'm happy to say, because it really is such a useful book, and it deals with so many critical topics, like developing a plan, and when you start for yourself or for your parents, developing a plan to age successfully, And then part 2 is location, location, location. And basically, where are you? Do you want to age in place? Are you thinking about moving closer to kids? And what kind of criteria would you look at if you picked up and moved? Are you looking for an AARP designated livable city, or you're looking for high quality medical care? So many people move to Florida because there's no taxes to retire. What about a life care community, which we know is complicated? And then the third section is when your parents need more help and care, and a lot of useful information, much of what we've talked about today, Bob, in terms of home care, home health care, and how to vet a home health or how to vet any facility. And then the last section, a prepared exit plan, which may sound like, what? A prepared exit plan? A good death? What would that mean? And I have a lot to say about that.
Well, vetting is a really important thing too. When you talk about these skilled nursing facilities, they're all being supervised by the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services. So you can go you can look for their star ratings, and so is home healthcare companies and other clinical companies that are providing services that are being paid by Medicare. So you do want to do your homework, and a lot of the various states, and I know in the state of Arizona is the Department of Health Services. If you want to find out how they are doing, they have their own star rating service. So it's really important to do your vetting.
That is so important. No matter what the star ratings are for any state or agency, I can't stress enough that it's important that you as a family really do your homework. And I'm happy to tell you that I share on my website free resources of any questions, lots of questions to ask if you're vetting any senior living facility, whether, again, it's a full-service retirement community, a life care community, skilled nursing, home care. So I want to let people know about that resource because I decided to put it on my website for free, even though it's in the book. There's a lot of information that's extremely useful and helpful to your listeners.
How do people get to your website?
Fortunately, it's simple. It's www.starbradbury.com, and Bradbury, it's star with one R, STARBradbury.com. And at the top of the homepage, there's a tab, Resources, and there's a lot of information that you'll find useful. And before we do run out of time, Bob, I want people to know that I sent you a special code just for your show that will offer 20% off the book.
Oh, wow.
Both whether it's Kindle or the paperback version. If they go to the link I supplied with you that you'll put on your website, that's directly to the publisher, Ben Bella Publishing. And so that I wanted to pass that on as something special that I can offer. They have to enter the coupon code FUTURE, all in caps, when they're checking out, and they'll apply that 20% discount. No limit to number of books. Because I say that seriously because I've had people say, I'm buying a book for myself and for my 3 kids, and I'm sending it to them. Or I'm buying a book for myself and my sister so we can be on the same page as we help our aging parents. So that's the kind of feedback I'm getting from people about how much of a help it is, and that it really is a step-by-step guide. I have foundational principles they can apply to any situation that'll help.
Well, for our listeners, that's future, not it's singular.
Correct.
Not it's singular. Future, all in caps. One of the things I do want to share, and we haven't really talked about it, and I'm pretty sure it's in your book under the legal and financial documents you have to have in hand, and that is it's a topic we talk about often here, and if we land on this topic, it's the last one we talk about, it's probably one of the most important ones, and that is advanced planning, advanced directives. And, so many people, they don't think they're going to die. So many people that are like, like Lauren's age, who should have them in place. I don't know if she does, but I know that I know that my children do. Lauren, do you have them in place?
I have an appointment next Wednesday.
You have an appointment next Wednesday, okay?
Yes.
And, good.
And Lauren is in her 30s. She's not quite 40 yet.
For a few more weeks.
So So it's really important for us to, think about that and plan for the inevitable. And that is having a medical power of attorney. In our state, you get a mental power of attorney that is advanced directives, such as do not resuscitate. I mean, all of those things. And of course, your last will and testament, too.
Well, when I sit down with my clients, I always say, let's get the most important things checked off on the top of my list, which is always advanced directives, living will, healthcare surrogate forms under that umbrella. And I'm so happy to hear you saying it doesn't matter how old you are. Yes, you do need advanced directives, even if you're in your 30s or 40s. But I am shocked continually when I sit down with people in their 70s or even 80s who not only don't have advanced directives, but they don't even have a will. And these are people I live in a university town. I've talked to people who have PhDs.
They're sophisticated.
So I have learned has nothing to do with education, and they haven't even done a will or a trust. People with serious assets.
Right.
And I'm always amazed.
No, I am too.
But yes, you're so right, Bob.
We have less than a couple minutes, and I'm just so glad that we're drawing attention to this. And I want our listeners to know that this isn't a one-time conversation. This is an ongoing conversation. I want our listeners to know that just because you have a child that's 18 years old and older doesn't mean that you as a parent have the authority to make medical decisions for them. And I use it, for example, if your kid goes to college and unfortunately gets in an accident or finds themselves hospitalized and they're unconscious and a medical decision needs to be made. Just because you're the parent doesn't give you that right. You have to have your advanced directives in place. We have less than a minute left. I want to turn the mic over to you, Star. I want you to please answer a question maybe that I haven't asked, or give our listeners a lasting thought as we close out.
I will say this. There's a quote I love that says, "Do not regret getting older. It is a privilege denied many." It is a privilege denied many. Mm-hmm. So again, back to that realistic optimism. When you're looking ahead at aging successfully, you don't wait until your slow-go years. Enjoy your go-go years. But in the middle of all those go-go years, and actually long before, look ahead and plan for your slow-go years and no-go years. Because the biggest mistake I see people make is they think, I feel great at 65. I feel great at 70 or 75, and assuming that won't change. And we all know we don't have much control over it, but let's do what we can to age successfully and make a plan.
I love it. And I don't look in the rearview mirror. Look out the windshield. Today's the best day of your life. Star Bradbury, thank you for joining me on Health Futures. Make it a great day. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next Friday.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress Home Care Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit cypresshomecare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3 FM.